Hello and welcome to Decorate It. My name is Mary and this is Wes, and tonight is episode 48. It's the second part of our Built to Cast series, and we are discussing the grips tonight. A little movie magic's going to be entering into the picture. Remember how last week we were discussing what lengths the grips and everything that we were going to do on the blank? Well, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago because we took vacation.
We were on vacation last weekend, which is why we weren't here on our normal scheduled time. And enjoyed the beach and got back, and now it's time to catch up. But we were originally discussing a 14-inch rear and an 8-inch foregrip.
It's still a 14-inch rear.
But that includes the butt.
Yes.
So with the little bulbs, the rubber bulbs that you can put on there, with it fully on there, to where the real seat is at 14 inches, the grip actually ends up being just 12 inches, which is what I was trying to say.
Well, I thought you said 12 and a half.
No, I was trying to tell you last week, I've always done a 12-inch rear because I wasn't taking the butt into account. That's just extra, in my opinion. Anyways, and then I did manage to get him down to a 7-inch foregrip. So we did shorten it just a little bit, which will just allow for an extra inch for the decorative wrap, well, the tiger wrap, because that's what you wanted to do.
That's what you're doing.
I know. You wanted me to do that. So basically what I did was started on this project yesterday, very last minute, Mary. This is the set of grips I created. There is also another set that I haven't finished because I had to get these finished for the show, but we're going to watch a video on how to make these. And they're actually, I know they look super complicated, but they're not too bad. It's a glue up session. You will see multiple glue up sessions that come with it and multiple cuts, but they're actually pretty fun to make. I will also say in the next video, we are going to actually get these to size because these are just turned round, so they're around like 1.5 inches diameter. They should be around 1.25 for the final. So in the next one we'll get to shaping and all that stuff, but just a fun set of grips.
Have you seen these colors in a tiger?
I don't think so, but we're gonna see how it looks, aren't we?
Yep, you'll have to now.
Basically what I did was I filmed all of the content. Okay, I have about 3 hours worth of videos in the process of making that, and that's not glue, that's not drying time, that's just me of doing all the steps to do all the things. So between the 2 days I probably spent 4 to 6 hours on those particular grips, but I was bouncing with another set that I've also have working on too, and I took all that recording and I put it into a little video. So what's going to happen is we're going to go right into the video and you're going to be able to see the steps of how we made these. There will be a small little intro, and then I will be discussing what is going on in the video the entire time, because I took all the audio out of it so that it wasn't blaring noise of the bandsaw or the random banter happening in the background. The kids going, Mom, what about this? Mom, what about this? So I will say working with EVA is one of my favorite things to do. It's really fun to play around with it and really kind of just try stuff. And really that's how I came across how to do this particular pattern, was just trying stuff, which is pretty much what I do all the time, just see if it works or not. And if you need EVA, obviously I sell it and have some awesome colors, and they're at threadcentral.net. Anyways, shameless plug. Let's go to the grip video. Welcome to the Built to Cast series. We are working on some grips. Yesterday I took 2 pieces of EVA, my lime green and my navy, and I cut them to size. We have a 7-inch foregrip and a 12-inch rear that we're working with. I have 2 different colors because we're going to mix match these together, and then we're going to come back with a yellow and put some trim into it as a random abstract. It's a beginner friendly grip. It's just going to look a little bit more complicated than just putting simple trims on it. It's going to be fun, it's going to be quick, and you're going to learn how to make a cool little custom grip out of EVA. Let's get started. So for these particular grips, we start with 2 blocks of the same exact size, and I'm going to use that double-sided duct tape to actually tape them to each other. which means that I'll be making the same cuts on both blocks at the same exact time, because the idea is to flip-flop the colors back and forth to kind of create the background for them. And the double-sided duct tape I use works really well. It's a lot better than using that tape method I used to use, where you taped up the whole block and then you couldn't see the block, and then it was just a mess. But once they're on there, I just kind of do some, I did straight lines for this one, and you just want to label them. You're not always going to necessarily follow the line that you're drawing. It's just kind of a concept. Okay, here, cut here, kind of do this, do that. And the labeling is just to make sure that you don't get them mixed up. On the second one, I did A2, B2. And then you have to take it over to your bandsaw and make sure you raise it up so that both blocks can go underneath of it. I have a 10-inch, so I can do this pretty easily. Some of these camera views are a little funky, but I'm still working on a good place to put the camera so you guys can see what's going on. And I use those cuts just as a guideline. Now, as I go through the blocks, the tape holds the two pieces together so they don't get, falling all over the place. And like I said, I'll generally use that line as a guide. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I don't really have any issue with it. But you're just going to push these through, keep them together. I usually set them below the bandsaw at the table below me and just keep that stacked together. And then we're going to cut the other one as well, following the lines-ish. You can see I wavered off of that one. That's usually how I draw them. Like, they're never straight unless I use a ruler, and I'm not going to use a ruler for those kind of cuts. But this is the fun part, because then once we get all the pieces cut and we get it back over to your bench, you can see in this one I did not cut on the line, but you get it back over to the bench, and now it's time to separate them. And so keep your green together, keep your blue together, label everything as it comes apart so that you don't get them confused. I was going to try to use a China marker for the blue, but it just wasn't showing up that well. White paint pen would have been better, but I didn't want to use it. Anyways, label them the exact same thing and then flip-flop them, because we made the same cuts. You can easily flip them. And now you have two separate grips. So doing this method automatically creates two grips, all right? So if you're going to interchange the colors, you have two sets of grips, not just the one that you were trying to work on. And personally, I like it because usually I'll like one of them better than I like the other, because one ends up being darker. The other one's going to end up being a little lighter when I get done with it. And now it's time to cut some trim. So I have blocks beside the bandsaw that I have cut pieces off of, or I'm using as just trim strips, and I'm using 1/16, which is, it's roughly going to be about 1 millimeter. And typically what I do with mine is I'll push the little speed block to the blade, so it actually is running up against the blade. And you can see there my fence accidentally moved, so I had to reset it, but that's just one of the things that is with my Rikon. That fence gets a little funky sometimes. But I like to put it touching the blade so it gets a little bit less than what I'm looking for. And you always want to do a test cut. There's always little pieces. And when you're putting it up against the fence, you can kind of tap it to see if it's going to be there. So like that side's awful, don't cut on that side. But if you keep flipping it around, you can find one that's actually level and square. And that's the side that you use. And you just push it through. And this one, technically, you should have a push stick, but I have pressure going up against mine and it goes through. So I'm happy with that size, so I'm going to cut some strips. I did not do the video for all of the strips that I cut. I think I ended up cutting 6 strips out of this bunch. And with this is just go slow, be smooth about it. Don't let it stop and rest for too long, or it's going to chew out material in one spot as it sits there. So you just want to kind of try to keep it at a continuous moving motion, and it's not a big deal for you to be pushing as you're pulling from the backside either. Once you get all your strips cut, now it's time to start gluing. This is always the messy part. I always like to get some painter's tape and reverse it on itself, because the EVA shouldn't stick to itself. The glue doesn't stick to it, but you'll see this entire video process that it was not working with me. And I always pull mine, so the two that are getting glued together, I set them side by side. And then because I've got these weird angles, sometimes I have to flip them around to where it makes sense for me to actually apply the contact cement to them. And this one, we have a grouping of 3 that are getting glued together, so that's great. And just want to be able to work from in a sense that makes sense to you. So I always glue from like my left goes on my right, or my right always goes on my left, and I know to put those two together. And if I have one that doesn't glue up with a friend, then I put him to the side so I know that one doesn't get glue on it. And you just set these out on painter's tape. Painter's tape helps to keep them kind of where you want them, also keeps them from sticking. And when you're working with little small pieces, like you see the white strips in the background that I got laid down for the other grips I was working on, it keeps them from sticking to the table, which is a lot easier. And the applicator I use is just a wedge of EVA that has been cut at an angle. It is overly gross with a pile up of contact cement sitting on it currently, but it still works really well. Once it gets to be too bad and I can't really use it good, like it just kind of smudges stuff on there, then I cut it. I think I actually cut it today at some point, but these are videos from yesterday. And you just apply one thin, even coat onto the EVA, let it dry. Once it's dry, you can see that the color difference changes, and then you come back, you do your second coat on all of this stuff. And just imagine, from this point, that we're only like 7 minutes into this video. If we were doing this live, this would be like a 20-minute endeavor currently here.
Or longer.
Or longer. So that's the reason why I went ahead and did this, because hopefully it makes sense. And you can always go back and reference it, because I'll have the show put on YouTube on Tuesday.
And if y'all have any questions while we're going through this, make sure to ask them, and I'll either stop Mary or answer them for you.
Yeah, we'll stop the show and answer them. But so at this point, I am just putting the pieces together, even pressure, making sure that the sides are lining up, and then rearranging them for the pairs. You can see here I'm starting to get frustrated with that tape. I typically use the 3M painter's tape. I use the cheaper one that's been running around the shop, and I absolutely hate it. But I really just think it was because I was filming. It never fails when I'm filming stuff. It always acts out the worst. But you just want to put good pressure, make sure all four sides are on there. You don't want to like squash them, because you could accidentally curve the seam. But just make sure you've got good joints, good firm joints. And then now we're back to our second glue up. I'll try to keep track to make sure, see how many we have in this, because I did not count. Once that's dried, come back with your second coat. And always, always, always make sure with all this contact cement, if you're working on multiple sets of grips like I am, to try to work in a well-ventilated area. My husband has been fussing at me because the air filter that we have currently is not keeping up with the demand. And it smelled in here really bad yesterday. Now we're going to glue all those things together. And make sure that on whatever side that you had labeled it, that that's the side that you glue together, and you don't accidentally flip it or something. Usually they won't go together any other way, but sometimes you can accidentally switch it, and then it will curve and do some funky stuff. Reset for the third glue up. Once again, 2 coats. Second coat going on. Just a whole lot of gluing and waiting when it comes to these grips. But if you're working with multiple sets, it doesn't feel that way. And when they're big like this, you don't have to use the tape. The tape gets more aggravating. It's just those little itty bitty pieces. And now we're going to do our final pieces getting glued together on those. Perfect. Even pressure still, making sure everything's still lined up, and really try to keep it square. Like if you go over a little bit and you accidentally shift it just a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. But now's the fun part. So we're going to match up the same sides that we cut on originally, but we need to rotate these because I want to cut them again and then flip them again. So we're going to put double-sided duct tape on that, stick them together, and you see how they look the same on the side. We have to start with where we are and we flip them. It doesn't matter if you rotate them right or you rotate them left. You just want to get it on the side that you haven't cut yet. And then we're going to take it back to the bandsaw after we do some more little cuts. And I like to take the cuts and break up dead or open space or a lot of chunk of colors. That way there's more going on the grip. And label them. You can also label them as they come off of the bandsaw. Some people don't even put these stripes on there. They just do over there and just start cutting and then they label it. Everybody's going to do it a little bit differently. Just make sure if you're cutting towards the edge of the grips, keep your fingers safe. We don't want to cut them off. We need them for a lot of things when it comes to rod building.
But you got 9 others if you do.
Yeah. Try not to take a major one if you do.
Make sure it's a pinky.
Pinky. Pinky. Or a fingertip. All right, now at this point, we're going to pull them apart again, keep them the same block. So the top block goes on top and the bottom block is on the bottom. And that's the original block that got cut apart. And that sticky tape actually pulls off pretty easily once you cut through it. And then magic happens again. You're going to flip-flop. And it doesn't matter if you start with the first piece versus the second piece. I just have a tendency to do it this way. And now you can see that we've got some cool little shapes happening. And we have those shapes happening on 2 different sides now, which is going to give the block more character. Now, if you want to continue this same pattern, you can continue to cut it again on the 3rd rotation and also on the 4th rotation. I've done it before. That's actually how I came up with those camo grips. But I forgot to film this part because I was actually talking. Those yellow trim pieces that we cut earlier, I just cut them with scissors to fit inside of it just a little bit longer. And that's where I'm going to plan to put these in, just as like an extra color. I had this idea that we were going to do some random abstract, and I was going to cut these with random abstracts after I got these glued together, but I changed my concept mid-swing because I knew I was running out of time. And honestly, this last glue up session with these yellow pieces didn't get finished until midnight last night. So yeah. Same thing again, put it down with the pieces of tape. You'll see here I've got all these pieces that are flat, less than about 1 millimeter thick, and they're going to curl up. And it's okay. I use the contractor's paper. That's the brown paper you see on my glue up table. Easy to change. And for the most part, if you've got the tape under those really thin pieces, they don't stick to the contractor's paper. However, if you put on a coat or the second coat, and you leave them for more than like an hour and a half, they will absolutely rip themselves to shreds coming off of the paper. They won't do it on the painter's tape, but they will on the contractor's paper, if you want to call it contact paper. But just a little side note there. Don't leave them for an extended point in time. If you're going to walk away, try to get them glued together before you walk away for a couple hours. Otherwise, they will get stuck and you'll be mad because it'll never fails. It rips in half. Then you got to start over. So that is the first coat on all of these pieces. So that is 4 glue up sessions so far. And a glue up session is 2 coats, not just 1. But yeah, that's pretty much with working with EVA. It's just the glue time, you know. Cut, glue, cut, glue, cut, glue. And then the fun part is at the end. And the fun part always goes so fast whenever you start to turn them. This is the...
I just wish you actually applied glue that fast.
Right? Oh, man. Yeah, this is sped up times 8. This is times 8. Can you imagine? So, like I said, it was like 3 or 4 hours worth of video. And not including the dry time with it. Can you imagine the dry time that would have been included if I had recorded all of this stuff? So, yeah.
I told you was doing this podcast alone.
I know, right? I got stuff to do. And with the little small pieces, if I'm not working with a whole bunch of small pieces, I like to take the bigger piece and put it onto the smaller piece so that the big piece makes it come off the paper a little bit easier. The other thing is, you know, if you don't get them aligned perfectly, like let's say that accidentally shifts just a little bit inside the block, it's fine. You're going to turn it from square to round anyways. So you want it to cover as much as you can. And I always cut excess of those trims on the outside so that I can just trim those up because I'd rather have it a little bit longer and know that it's exactly where it's supposed to be versus cutting it to the exact size and oops, I messed up the alignment and now I'm stressed that that's not going to glue up properly because if there's a little gap between the top corner, sometimes that can wreak havoc when it comes to turning if your tool gets caught in there. And now at this point, this is the 5th glue up session. Starting to condense them down. And I will say, typically in the shop here, the contact cement will dry within 15 to 20 minutes. If it's on a hotter day, like for instance, the AC needed its filters cleaned and I didn't realize it, and it was running a little bit warmer in here, and I was like, man, it's getting hot over here in this corner where I was gluing up stuff. So I cleaned the AC unit, and now it's pretty cold in here, which is great. That's what I like. But the glue was drying faster when it was warmer, but it was still somewhere between like 15 and 20 minutes between each coat to dry. But you do not want it to be shiny. You want it to be a matte look when you go to stick the pieces together. It's a stronger joint, and even though if I'd say 90% of it is dry and you still got like a wet spot on it for some reason, I wouldn't even put those together yet because it'll stick. But if you went to slam them together and then go put it on the lathe, it'll actually blow apart a lot faster because the seam's not as strong as the really tacky looking ones. And same thing before, line these up. So remember, the rule with anything when we're adding material into something is that if you're going to add in a millimeter somewhere, you have to take it out somewhere else so that the seams line up, right? I didn't do that on these. I kept these as square as I could have. Now, I've done these before, and what I usually do is I'll just shift them off seam so that it becomes a zigzag. I didn't want to do that because I kind of was just seeing how bad off they would get. I mean, it's 1 millimeter we're talking about here. So some of the joints on the actual grip themselves, and remember I'm building 2 here, but only finished 1. So maybe the other one looks better than the one I finished. We'll see whenever I finish the other one. But some of them they're fun. They're kooky. They're a little off. Some of them look just pristine. Like they're legit lined up exactly how they want to be. I did not care. This one, I got the block line. I changed my mind. I was going to line it up with the seam, and then this is not common that you can actually get it apart without adding more contact cement, and I'm surprised it didn't rip that piece, but that's why I did that. I had originally going to line it up to match the seam, but it was going to be so off that I was like, nah, we're just going to go with a funky looking grip that doesn't have matching seams because I'm not going to cut that much material off. So that's why I did that. But typically you can't get 2 pieces apart like that. I just somehow got really lucky that they actually peeled and the yellow didn't rip, which has happened to me before, and I've had to sand it off and start over because if there's any bit of that piece left in there and you go to put a new piece on there, it just doesn't line up right. But I didn't care about the seams matching up. You may care, and if you do with these straight cuts like this, take out a millimeter of the same setting that we had it on for the yellow trims, and you're going to cut that off of the straight, which is a lot easier to do with the straight cuts. Now I'm working on one where I've got curve cuts, and there's just no way I can actually do that with the curve cuts because I'm just not that proficient at it. So basically, if you care about the seams lining up, you have to take out material, same amount of material you're putting in so they do line up, and if you don't care, then just roll with what I'm doing. That was our 6th glue up. That point. So now the 4 grips, there's 2 of them. The 4 grips are finished, and I'm mad at this tape and I'm ripping it up. And then we have 1 more glue up piece for the rear before we move on. Now, the one thing I do want to point out here too is I do not bore 12 inches for center. I refuse to do it because I can't keep it straight. I've only done it 1 time, and it was just on a solid piece, and I think the length of it was like 10 inches, and I managed to keep it center. So I'm going to glue these together, but I'm also going to cut these apart because I'm not going to bore them at 12 inches. And I'm pointing out some of the seam dramas where I'm just like, yeah, it's not perfect, but they're fun, okay? Some of them are pretty good, some of them aren't. It's what I decided to do for these particular grips. Now, you can take scissors and just cut off the trim, or you can take it over to the bandsaw. I usually try not to have the bandsaw cut it if I can, because the contact cement really messes with the blades, but most of the time I will end up having to take it over to the bandsaw just to get those final little things off of it. So now we've got it 2 cuts, flip-flopped, and the yellow put into it. At this point, they're cool looking little grips, but one of these is measuring shorter than 12 inches, which is to be expected because we've taken material out. Even though we put more in, it's only been a couple millimeters. So I'm going to use the shorter one, and I'm going to cut this thing in half, and we're going to add trim to it. This other one, surprisingly, was around 12 inches. I'm used to them coming out both shorter. I don't know why, unless that one just got most of the bigger pieces that got glued together. I don't know how that happened. Same thing with the foregrips. One of them is almost 7. The other one was shorter. So I had 2 long, 2 short. Or two the same length, 2 short.
What'd you do?
I don't know. But that happens. I've had that happen multiple times. But they usually are shorter. They're usually not longer, but is what it is. They're fun little grips. This is where I ended with them last night. And today I came in and cut them in half. Because what I'm planning on doing, so that I can bore center and glue them back up, is to put trim in the middle. And I'm going to start with my 1/8, and I'm going to take off, I'm making 2 yellow trims and a navy in the middle. Use a push stick if it gets really small. Some people wouldn't like to get their fingers that close. It's okay. I did have this piece. Be careful when you're doing it. Sometimes they can be thicker on one side and thinner on the other. My navy is going to be 3/16. It's just a tiny bit bigger than the yellow, but it's enough size difference that it looks good. And for each grip, I needed three navies and 6 yellows. Now, this is normal. A lot of times there are some air bubbles in the EVA. It's normal. Don't worry about it. And that one doesn't even run all the way through it, so you're going to cut it out regardless. And this is what they're going to look like with them pieced. Now, I didn't know exactly how long they were going to get. Obviously, they're a lot longer than they're supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the middles together, or one side of them together, and just take off the material on the other end. And the other thing I was going to do is keep them lined up. But I had when I went to go actually glue them back to the trims, I did not have them lined up. They're kind of off, but it's okay. Everything about them is fine. And we're going to lay them out, and what we're going to do is we're going to glue the yellow to the actual grips on the inside, and then start to glue the trims that are going on the end caps on the outside together as well. So we're on our 7th glue up session. Once again, 2 light coats, let it dry. I really wish I could apply contact cement that fast.
I do too.
I get a lot of work done. If it would dry that fast too, right?
Yeah.
And then stick them together. Now, what I should have done was I should have stopped here when I got the yellows on both the pieces. But in the name of not really thinking and trying to get done with it, I decided to glue the blue to the other side, which isn't a problem. But I didn't take the width of that into consideration when I went to go cut the trim or the pieces off of the ends to make it equal to the 12 inches for the rear and the 7 for the fore. And so I was like, one side's a little bit longer than the other. Okay. We're going to get the rest of those glued together. And then the trim I added is basically about a 1/2 inch. And so I've got to take 1/2 inch off of both sides, and it should work out. It's actually 1.5 inches that needed to come off. I'm not the best at, I usually end up getting to this point and I'm like, all right, then I got to start dicing it. And here I cut the 1/2 inch off both of them, making sure that I was on the square side. But I had to take out this blue on this one, so because it was longer than the other one, making sure it's on the square side, and now they're equal. And so now I can glue the yellow back on there and it's going to be just fine. And that's the other grip. I know it's real quick at this point, but it's the other grip being cut. And then the other 2 1/2 inches. And they both came out to be just a tiny bit over 7 inches and a tiny bit over 12. So while I'm waiting on glue to dry, at this point we're on the 8th glue up. I'm going to go ahead and get my lathe set up. I use the 3-inch long jaws, or yeah, the 3-inch long nose jaws for boring center, and that helps stabilize it and keep it from doing this wild, crazy thing. And it also keeps it more center than when I was using just the standard one that comes with it. And the drills we use are the ones that come from Home Depot, I believe. And I just use it to punch through. Now I've got everything glued up, but I haven't trimmed up the edges. And I haven't taken any material off of these. I've left them completely the size they were. Obviously, you can see they're not going to fit in there with the trim being a little bit wider. So I need to take it over to the bandsaw and just trim up the edge a little bit. Once it's trimmed up, we're going to lock it in there. Trim these up. That one was fine. And start punching center on every single one of these. I even kept the foregrip. I split it in half and did it that way too, just to make sure it was fine. Every single one of these came out pretty true to center, minus the last one. The last one was waving. You can kind of see it going back and forth there, so it kind of got close to the edge. It's not a big deal, guys. We're going to be fine, because once we get it glued together where it's properly supposed to go, and I turn it down, because I didn't take any material off of this, I'm going to be able to get that back to center on the actual grip itself. So I just am going to take it back to the table for its final glue up session. I know we had 9 glue up sessions for these grips, and we're going to use mandrels to help us put them together. Now, funny story about this one is actually a bigger mandrel than the hole was drilled for, and once I got them stuck together, I couldn't get them off, and I had to go run inside and get Wes to take them off for me. I was like, where are you? Pull this off. I can't get it off. For the rear grip, I used the smaller mandrel and those mandrels are actually the ones from CRB. And that one is the one I like to use a little bit better. I'm trying to make sure I kept it lined up with that line I drew up a little bit earlier, but they still ended up getting a little off. I always wax the mandrel. It's not a necessary step, but it does help to get them on and off. And now's the fun part. Setting up the lathe to start doing the fun stuff. I use a wood skew. Make sure it's sharp. Chisel. It's a skew chisel. I use a short handle one, not the longer handle one, because I'm short. Make sure your tailstock is spinning. In order to make sure that it is spinning, you can also just draw some lines on it. And I had no idea the camera was bouncing so bad, y'all. I'm sorry. It stabilizes in a little bit, but sped up on 8 times, it goes a little nuts. But we start turning it, and you use just the corner of it, like at an angle, and you can see I check it periodically. I am wearing a shield on my face at this point in time because most of this stuff is flying at me and it's hitting me. And now I'm just going to sand it. I did not take these down to the actual size they're supposed to go to. I just got them round. I didn't want to stress the joints because I literally just glued them together and they were getting a little hot. So I just took them round with 240. That's all I used, was just 240. And pretty cool looking little grip.
Ta-da!
Mm-hmm. Look what I can do. That's it, or that little otter. And I have a little air pocket right here, but it's okay because they're at 1.5 inches outer diameter. I'm going to take it down to 1.25. The air pocket won't be there anymore. And then the rear grip, doing that one, I really need a longer tool rest. I'm starting to notice my 12-inch ones are kind of sketchy at the ends, so I got to upgrade my tool rest. Using the skew just to get it round, peeling off a little bit more material, getting it a little bit more round, but I don't stress about it being perfectly round. If it's got a few divots up and down, like, it's fine. I just sand off the divots when I get ready to do that. And hold the shop vac while you're sanding so it sucks all the extra dust up. Wear a face mask while you're doing that. And turn it around.
I'd rather you wear a respirator than a face mask.
Yep. So this is the final look. We got a little bit of crookedness on the rear, but that's okay. Because when it goes on the blanket, it'll be straight. And you can see there, the seams aren't quite perfect when I went to glue them together. I should have just twisted it and made it more intentional, but it's fine. Still fun. Still kind of crazy vibes. Down at the bottom, it's got this kind of like fish scale thing starting, and then it's got a big chunk of blue up at the top with what looks like a angry face or bathing suit. And then that's the foregrip. That one had a pretty good seam with it lining up. That one wasn't too bad. But yeah, I don't really know what to call these, but this is the grips I made for it. They need a name, but they're pretty fun to make. So that's the grips that we made, or I made. Wes supervised.
I fussed.
He fussed. He fussed and helped me get it off of the mandrel I got it stuck on.
Because she will not wear PPE.
No, I do. I wear the face shield every
Did you
single
wear
time.
the respirator today?
I did not wear the respirator
Did
for
you
the
wear the
contact
respirator
lens.
while gluing up?
I did not wear the respirator while I was gluing up. I know. I understand. You don't wear your safety goggles when you're testing blanks, so I don't want to hear it.
I look at brazing and welding all day.
Okay.
It's fine. It's not going to kill me. It's just going to make me blind.
Anyways, they're actually a pretty fun little set. I can't wait to turn the other one down. You can see the little bit of the curve in it as it sits there. Like, this is what I was saying. It's either a face.
It's a mad face.
It's a mad
face. Makes me
face
think of...
or a bathing suit.
What was that cartoon?
I don't know. But yeah, look, that's almost that fish scale pattern right there. So now I got to figure out what I did in that section, and I can repeat it, and maybe I can figure out the fish scales. But on this side, I've got it. Y'all can't really see it from there, but that seam actually matched up pretty good. If I had done a third cut, this would have a lot more movement on it. So where all these little cross points like this are here, that's where the cuts were done. And where there's straight kind of or curves like this is the side that wasn't cut into. So that's how you get all the activity happening on all the seams, is how many different cuts you make on the axes.
It's another mad face.
I guess we're going to call these the Angry Tiki because of all these little faces in here. This one, when I glued that one back together, you can see it there. I really shifted it off, but it's okay. They're fun, and it's fine. Maybe the other set will look better. I just had to have one that was finished for this one. So hopefully, if you decide to try that pattern, you'll have some success. I've got another video coming out. I don't think it'll be YouTube, but like my little short reels that I'm doing of the red and turquoise grips that I started. I just quit on those today so I could get this finished for you guys tonight. One thing that I do want to mention, obviously PPE is important. We want to spare our lives as long as we can with this stuff, but bandsaw blades, you need a minimum of 10 TPI. I don't really care what bandsaw you're working on. We're all going to figure it out. And as long as you've got a bandsaw blade that's got 10 teeth per inch, even more would be better, but that's going to do great when it comes to cutting these things and making sure your tool is sharp when it comes to the skew. A lot of people will use, what's that other one they use? Is it the gouger? It's that half turn thing. It's a bowl turner is what I've always seen it as.
It's a rough gouger.
Yeah, I don't use that. I've never used
it.
I just use the skew because it just is easy. Because once you figure out that angle that you got to use and you're just using the point, it comes off like butter, like honestly. And butter. And as long as you let the contact cement dry before you put on the second coat, let it dry and then put the joints together. The joints are pretty good. As I said earlier, I didn't want to sand these all the way down to size because I didn't want to stretch the joints out, because as we are sanding them, the heat builds up from the sandpaper, which is why you see me take a break and constantly getting the dust and stuff off of it, because one, the extra dust added to it creates a higher grit, which means it sands down faster. It also creates more friction, which heats up the grip quicker, and the heat will make the seams explode. So because they were newly glued up, I was like, I'm not putting these through the ringer. How I normally do them is I wait at least 6 hours, sometimes the next day before I turn them, just to be safe. So I know that joint is secure, and there's no reason why you can't glue them together and then go turn them, but you just got to be careful with them.
Or be quick about it.
Or stop and let them cool down, because I've had them heat up and the seams start to separate. If it does separate and you see it before you do immense damage on accident, just stop and push the seam back together and let it chill out, and you can keep moving on once it gets cool. I've had multiple grips do that before because I was trying to sand them too fast. So I just started to slow down, and I haven't had any issues with it since. This just proves my point again today, where it started to open up, that sanding it too fast after you got it glued is going to, unless you're careful, it's going to possibly expand. The other thing that we wanted to discuss is the product of the night, which this has just come out 2 days ago.
Yep.
And I think this is a great thing for beginners to get into, and for presents, maybe for children, or maybe if you're not familiar with some of the different techniques that are for bass fishing in general. They have a ton of these kits available, and I think they've got them in like 14 colors that you can also get.
It's all the CRB MHX colored blanks, but they're the summertime bassin casting rod kits is what this one is. You get every option from 7 foot to 7'6", 8 foot, every style that you could possibly want in a casting rod, different colors, and they're all, let me see the 8 foot.
They all have cork on them too, which that's cool.
Yep.
It's not just like the standard, like it actually has trims and stuff in it, so it's kind of nice with the winding with the trims and everything.
It's a full kit. The 8 foot's running $193 retail.
What's that one
for? That's the 30-foot deep crank and glide bait.
Gotcha.
And then drop down to a 7 foot at $145. So from about $145 to $200 for the entire kit.
And the cool thing about it as well is that if you decide to order a kit, whether it is for a friend or a family or yourself, Decorate at 10, get you 10% off of it as well. And the bundle, I think they have with the beginners.
Yeah, if you scroll down, you can bundle a core startup kit and save an additional 5%. If you did that 7 foot 10 to 17 square bill crankbait setup, it'd be $145 for that, $149.95 for the core rod building startup kit, which is your dryer, your stand, your alcohol torch, brushes, glue, everything you need to start with.
Yeah, it's a starter kit.
And it drops it down to $280.19 for the two of them. And Decorate at 10 still gets you 10% off of that.
Yeah. So that's really cool that is, you can get a discount off of that. Mudhole is starting to drop seasonal rod kits, which is going to be great for people. Maybe you're going somewhere to fish and you haven't been fishing in that area. Now you get a chance to be able to build a rod with the components already put together for you so you can play around with it and finesse it after you get home with something that you have put together yourself, but know what the standard should be, and you're not having to go borrow a rod that's a store bought rod. Or, like I said, children, getting your family and friends involved into it. If you've got somebody that's approached you before, Wes has mentioned this on a previous podcast, where they're wanting to learn how to do a build, these kits are a great thing for them because it's not going to be too complicated, because the stress of putting the rod together, just gluing the rod together and getting the guides wrapped on there is going to be,
Enough.
You're not wanting to throw them under the bus with marbling and decorative wraps and abalone and tigers and oh my, they're going to just lose their mind. So having the basis, getting them started, give them a couple where it's just the basics and getting them into it and they're learning from you. It's actually a great little business endeavor, side project for your business, and also helping out a friend or family member get involved in rod building, because we want more people to be rod builders, right?
Lots.
Right. Lots and lots and lots.
Lots of people.
Lots of people. Give us all the people. I also want to take a minute and thank our sponsors, Foundation Outdoor Group, Mudhole. We love you. We appreciate you. You're doing some awesome stuff this year. We will see you at ICAST. ICAST, I'm super excited about. And what is it, like 3 weeks away? Is that what you told me?
Just over 3 weeks.
And we have a lot to finish.
We leave 3 weeks this Tuesday. So you have 3 weeks and 3 days.
I got a lot to finish before then. But we are very excited to have the opportunity to be able to give back to the community using the discount code Decorate10, where you guys get 10% off of any of the CRB, MHX, American Tackle, the Gaho reel seats, or the Pro products as well. But you get 10% off of that all the time. So you need to restock on your thread, you need to restock on your epoxy, you need to restock on anything that's under any of those labels. Use the code. Use it. Use it. It's good all year long. It's never going to go away unless I disappear for some reason, and I don't plan on doing that.
Yeah, PPE.
Anyway. I'm really thankful that they're working with us to be able to help other people learn, and also we can give something back in return. And very excited to go to ICAST. It's going to be amazing. And hang out there and build, and we're going to be doing, be doing stuff in the booth. I don't know if I'm going to bring projects with me this year, or if I'm going to just marble and wrap this year, but we'll figure it out. The only thing I can't do is make grips.
I think we should make them bring a wood lathe and you turn grips.
I don't think ICAST would appreciate me throwing that stuff around.
That's not my problem.
I wonder if we're going to be mic'd up with the TV again this year.
No idea.
I hope we have our boat back. Our boat was pretty cool last year.
No idea.
But yeah, we appreciate them. Thanks for everything they do. Looking forward to seeing whatever the new stuff's going to be launching this year, because there's a lot of fun stuff coming out. You guys just have no idea. And also keep a lookout for the advanced classes at Mudhole sometime in the fall. They'll eventually get announced as soon as they get everything ironed out.
Pending all hurricanes.
We will be there teaching. I don't know if Wes is going to be teaching this time, but we will be there as a team. Now, the other thing that everybody's been waiting on is we also have a giveaway product for the night.
What are we giving away?
The CRB Mandrel Rod Building Kit, because we were talking about making grips tonight, so it just made sense to give this away. So you're going to get the CRB Mandrel Kit with the little collars. It's got the Pro Paste, it's got the mandrel wax, it's got the sanding screens and sandpaper with this. This is everything that I have literally used in the video. The mandrel wax is, I just use the paraffin wax. It's candle wax, but it's the same stuff. You just put it on there exact same way. Sanding screens, I don't use them that often, but on the occasion for some
Just starting out, it's good to have that.
Yeah, because you can take down a lot of material pretty quick with them, and then obviously sandpaper is always a need. To win the mandrel kit, you have to be the first one with your timestamps, so make sure to get your fingers ready. Hi, Andy. Yes, we are a little off schedule, so it might have been a little off, but we were supposed to be live last week, but we were at the beach, so we just did it this week. But it's always at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
What booth is Mudhole? What booth number is Mudhole at ICAST?
Booth number for Mudhole at ICAST. Go find it. Whoever gets to it first.
I'll give you
gets
the
it typed
only
in.
hint you're going to get. It's under Foundation Outdoor Group.
Foundation Outdoor Group is Mudhole. Like, that's who owns Mudhole. But everybody just knows Mudhole's name. It gets very confusing. But as far as like the paperwork concerned, it's always going to say Foundation Outdoor Group, but it's Mudhole. So you'll see the Mudhole signs this year. So don't go looking for Mudhole, look for Foundation Outdoor Group. And whoever gets the booth number first is the winner of the mandrel kit, which I actually own that mandrel kit.
It's pretty nice.
4608.
There it is.
There is Duncan. Woo! We are at 4608. Congratulations, Duncan. You win the mandrel kit. Now you can be making your own grips. You're welcome. Now you just need to get some EVA. And you can play around with some.
We'll ship you this nice collection of colors.
Anyways, we are now swinging into Q&A. So any questions, comments, concerns that we have had about anything that you saw in the video, anything that may have not made sense about the grips, any questions, maybe nothing about that. Maybe we just move it on to something else about rod building. Because y'all's Q's and y'all's questions during the live is amazing. You guys have great questions. It's great information. I can't, when I go to do the little shorts from the podcast, I can't narrow down what to keep, what not to keep. Like, it's good info, every single one of it. What do you guys recommend for epoxy fumes in a small space? My rod room smells like a chemical plant when I coat. Man.
Respirator.
I have an air filter. It's the Win, but I'm going to be honest, I forgot to change the filter on it. So it's not doing me a whole lot of good other than just pushing some air around.
3M.
Go
get the 3M one.
What?
So you can show him what he should be wearing.
The mask?
Yeah.
Well, he's talking about the smell in his room, though. Like, it doesn't just disappear.
The only thing you can do is put a fan in and blow it out to
Yeah.
get it out of the room.
According to the can, I mean, we're epoxy in general. Like, you got to move the air out of the room somehow. And we have a air filter, which helps, but we would really need an air filtration system to be able to push all
need
that.
something bringing in fresh and taking out old, and filtering both sides.
And I need something like that, especially in here, because we only have one window, and I actually can't open it because we're in South Carolina and there's bugs. Every time we open a door, there's actually one flying in front of us right now. That's a little moth.
I don't know if you can see that on camera.
No, it came right across my face, so they had to see it. But every time we open the door, boop, like a whole bunch of gnats, these little, the gnats, the flies, the moths, they all just in. So I can't open the doors. If I lived somewhere where I didn't have a whole lot of bugs, or if it was in the winter or something, I'd open the door because then I could push the air out. But
I feel like
that's all you can do.
I feel like Duncan's question will be included in this series at some point.
So with finishing the grip, what is the process? You get it down to size, and actually I'm going to start the next episode's going to be getting these to size and reaming them and getting them glued up. And I'll check with Wes whether or not we're going to glue the real seat at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get the whole rear sorted. Ready and glued up so that the next step in the next video would be the Tiger. But I would get these down to size with the same 240 that I was sanding it with. My last finishing coat after to get all the dust off of it. And you guys can see they look pretty good. I didn't do it today because I'm not finished with them. But I'll take a magic eraser and I'll just run it back and forth a couple times just to pull the extra dirt dust off of it that transfers. But when we get them on there, I'll probably, instead of waiting to do it after they're glued, because usually what I'll do is I'll glue them and then I'll taper these to the blank so the edges taper a little bit better as they're on the blank. But I don't do that all the time. I usually will try to do it a little bit beforehand so that I'm not chancing ruining my components at the same time. So I'll try to get the edges tapered down before we get on there. But it's pretty much done now. It just needs to get smaller. It's too big. But you really don't have to do much to them. And when they get dirty, use a magic eraser, spin it, clean it, boom. Any tough stains or anything on it that just won't come out, get a toothbrush with some dish soap and water and scrub it. They come right back to looking as good as they did the day that you made them. I need a respirator for sure. So high right now, not in a good way. It's bad. The Wes was truly, honestly fussing at me for a good reason. Because yesterday, the fumes in here from the contact cement.
I couldn't stay in here. I walked in and was
awful.
like, what the hell are you doing?
I had, just for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I had 10 grips, 10 sets of grips being glued up at the same time. That's a lot of contact cement that's just hanging out in here, you know? And
I couldn't take, I had to leave.
the AC wasn't working properly yesterday. I didn't catch it till today. That needs to have its filter changed. I can't open the doors. I can't even open them at night to get it aired out because bugs still come in at night. Wherever that little moth went, he came in when we came in here for the thing, or he's been in here. I don't know. There's a bunch of bugs in here. We've become best friends. Andy's over there somewhere, and Ed's over there in the corner. But South Carolina, like, there's bugs all over the place. That's the flies. I give them names because they annoy me. I'm like, but I did have a fly. Guess what? Contact cement's great for catching flies.
Yeah. He landed on this grip.
He landed on the grip, upside down. I guess he tried to, like, get off with his things, and he ended, but he was on his back, on his wings, and I was like, and you're an idiot. I just took a paper towel and got rid of him. But yeah, it's great. Apparently, if you get contact cement somewhere, they'll just attack it. Who knew?
You're welcome, Carlos. That's the one that I bought for her, made her buy,
I have it.
that is over there and she doesn't use. It works great when you use it.
I do use
doesn't-
it.
If you have a beard, though, it doesn't seal all the way because obviously the beard's not going to seal, but it still works. I use it too. Just doesn't work as well.
We used it when we were working with that wood that was super poisonous because Wes made the mistake to start cutting a piece on the bandsaw, and it wasn't 5 minutes. He's like, "I'm not feeling good." And I was like, I told you, Mark warned us, you got to put a respirator on for that thing," and that's the one that we bought for it. I just don't like to wear them long term because my face gets like, I feel like Darth Vader. And I know.
At least you're alive.
I
and like Darth
know.
Vader.
I know. I don't want this to turn into a whole PPE kind of thing. I could fuss at you about some stuff too, but I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. Quit trying to bend it. It's fine.
I just like watching the phone bend. Would you?
No, that stuff
Chill.
hurts. That stuff hurts.
I like watching it go squish. To see it get smaller and bigger. And then smaller and then bigger.
What Cricut do you use for your detailed inlays? What tip setting do you use? I have the Maker 3, and even after making sure that the EVA sheets are less than 3 millimeters, taping the edges, changing the cutting settings and tips, it keeps jamming midway. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Okay, first off, you've done multiple things that I already do. I have the Maker 3. I tape the edges of the EVA. Mine have only ever gotten jammed when the center of the sheet was bigger than the outer edges. My other reason why they may have gotten jammed was because some of the tape got caught on the roller as well. But as long as it's under 3 millimeters, I know that mine particularly, it loves 2.9. It'll do anything 2.9 and less without any dramas. I use the deep knife blade, and I cut it on the leather setting that's on there. So it says it's going to do multiple, like 17 passes for one design, but I don't ever let it run for 17 passes. I usually cut it off at 4.
Yeah.
And now, depending on some of the EVA, some of it's a little bit more dense. If I'm cutting white, for instance, one of the white sheets, I have to actually take an X-Acto blade to finish the cut to get it out of there because it's a little bit tougher than the rest of the colors. But for the most part, that's it. But usually if it's jamming up, either the center of the sheet is higher than you think the outside is, or some tape is getting caught up in it, in the wheels or something. Carlos, what kind of epoxy are you using? Yeah, what's making is your room really small to make it stink up like that?
Some people are hypersensitive to epoxy smells too.
Yeah, that's true. Because I know, and some people are allergic to it.
But I will say,
they can't have it touch you.
if you're doing it in your house, Find a reputable HVAC person, not dealer person, and ask them about air filtration in your house, because there are UV cleaners that legitimately work and will take the smells directly out of your house.
True story. You're welcome, Craig. That's always, for mine, that's always been, it'll jam up right there because the middle section's just bigger. Using Next Level and Gen 4. I didn't think those smelled that bad.
They've got a smell.
Do they? I'm used to Pro Coat. It just smells like epoxy to me. It's not very strong.
That's the smell.
Just that.
Yeah. But you got to remember, you're in a 20 by 20
I mean, a 20 by 20.
garage.
I've
that
got air
does
moves.
seep out.
I got air moving, yeah, because we haven't got that fixed on
No,
the
that
door.
door's fixed. Stop it.
Did you fix it?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. And we got the little filter.
Josh trying to throw me under the bus.
I'm not trying to throw it in your bus. I didn't know that you fixed the threshold that I ripped up. I'm sorry.
I fixed it that day it was raining because I was tired of it coming in.
Thank you. I don't know how I missed it, but apparently
Because the kids were in here.
that's why. Never noticed a bad smell with Next Level. They all just smell like epoxy to me. I think the only one that didn't really have much of a scent to me was Classic Coat. It wasn't very strong at all. He's working in a 13 by 12 room. Yeah, that's a little bit more compact.
And if it's in your house, like, that's a different story.
Yeah. Is your EVA block very dense? Yes, it is.
You want to find out?
Don't you dare. Don't you dare. I will say,
They hurt.
they hurt. They hurt. I don't know if you guys can see that. I went with one of the more harder EVAs for the simple fact that I was tired of the softer EVA that I was coming across ripping out and sanding out and doing some stupid stuff. But it takes a lot to get an indent into this stuff. Now, obviously, Wes is pushing on an edge that's been cut, so it has a little bit more movement. And obviously, when you do the thinner pieces, it doesn't feel like this, but like it's a brick. But I did it that way because I was tired of rip outs and sand outs and stuff. So I got denser stuff. I got stuff that I will say I have drastic difference between some of the stuff I have previously that obviously I've got old stock of other people's things versus mine. I have to wear a face shield with mine. Otherwise, my face would be welt and bruised all the time. I never had EVA come flying at me like mine does. And I never had red marks on my hand from the other EVA from where it slaps me. There was one part in that video, and I fast forwarded it, so you probably didn't catch it, but one of the pieces that I was curling off of the grip as I was making it slapped me so hard, I went, ah! And there was a lot of cursing and stuff, which is why I took the audio out for most of the stuff. But I had a red mark. Not even an hour later, I was inside cooking. I said, look at this crap. And Wes was like, dang, you good? I'm like, it'll be fine in a little bit, but it was a slap. It's pretty dense.
It's also stupid, too.
What is stupid?
Dense.
Grip finish size, do you work that to suit the real seat or do you have them as a standard?
Yes.
So there's a typical standard size for said standard hand. I don't know what an actual standard hand is, to be honest. But the measurement is based off of from your finger here to the base of your palm. Typical for freshwater is 1.15 outer diameter, 1.15 inches outer diameter. Saltwater is between 1.15 and 1.25. However, salties, rods that sit on the piers with the rod holder that clamps to the pier itself, those have to be 1.5 inches. These are 1.5. And my hand, hand me that, please. You hold it like that.
Yeah.
Your fingers shouldn't touch here, which is why this one can still come down, because it's going to be just fine. 1.5 looks like that. Fatigue on that one would get old after a while, but you get it smaller to where your fingers would get closer to it, it would be fine. Wes and I have almost the same size hand, so we both can size stuff to that, but that's your typical measurements for it. Now, when it comes to the tapers at the ends, I taper it to the components. Because you're not holding right here, typically. You're not going, unless it's a bass rod. That's a different story. But that's generally the sizes.
Yes, Andy, we do. I've finally got her to where she'll build just about anything, but the price is always right.
I mean...
2 weights, 0 weights, ultralights.
No.
She will.
I will. I think the smallest one I've done is a 4-weight.
No, you've done a 2-weight and a 1-weight.
I haven't done a 1-weight. I haven't done a 2-weight. My smallest one was the brook trout. That was a 4-weight.
I thought that was a 2 or 3.
That was a 4-weight. 4-weight's the smallest I've done so far. I will say that. I am always up for the challenge, but I know going into it I'm going to hate it because the tips are so itty bitty.
I could have swore we did one.
I haven't.
What was the one that went to Japan?
Japan was the brook trout.
Was it a 4-weight?
It was a 4-weight.
I could have swore it was a 3.
It was a 4-weight.
2.
Most of the
Four,
flies
4.
I've done are usually 5 to 8 weights is the ones I've done.
In the random 12 over there.
Yeah, on the random big one that was actually a lot of fun. But yeah, we typically build the saltwater stuff inshore, offshore. Obviously, you see our rods sitting back there waiting for another coat of epoxy. Bass rods, some fly, not often. I like fly rods. I just don't like to go below a 5-weight just because of the size of the guides.
I'd prefer to never go below an 8.
And I prefer 8 is the preferred one. Actually, Mark Krause said that he doesn't do anything below an 8 anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's just a hassle.
The guides, man. The guide feet are wider than the blank itself.
Yeah.
It makes it aggravating. Off topic, laser carving used for burning on cork grips. Cut 3mm EVA for cutting out tiny detail pieces out,
Yes, and if you're not careful on how hot the laser's running, it will melt it. There is a way somebody found, I can't remember who it was. We talked about it at the last meeting thing.
Butthole?
No.
Or Foley. Orange Beach.
Somebody found a way to actually cut it and it not melt it. But you just have to watch the laser and what color laser going with what color of foam and how much wattage you're using and how much it's rated for, and basically try it.
So the simple
You'll find
answer to that is yes, it can cut it, but if it closes the edges and burns them, you're not going to be able to glue it back into anything. So you're going to have to mess with it.
Yeah.
You just don't want to
You can.
singe the edges.
And if you've got a CO2 laser, that would be even better.
For tonight's episode, we were just doing the second episode of Built to Cast, the little mini series that we're coming up with, and we're building that live bait blank that we picked out. And I did the grips, which I don't know what kind of pattern that is. It's just a random whatever Mary came up with, and it was a lot of fun. I usually, like I said, with this series, we wanted to build it in the steps that we take to do the build, which grips are always the first thing. If I'm making them and I'm not having to order, G2 handles or anything of that nature, then I'm going to make them, and as I wait for the components and stuff to get in. And then when the components arrive, I'll have the grips made so that we can just go ahead and start the glue up process. So the grips was just the natural next step into making this rod. And the grips for me personally will dictate kind of the rest of the flow and vibe for the rod. Now, Wes has picked out for me to use a tiger for the decorative part of it. We will see if that's actually going to flow with it or not. I know there's a flow thing. It just kind of depends on how
You're gonna make it flow.
I'm not going to make it flow. I'm going to be testing it because I haven't ever done a tiger before. So this is going to be a lot of trials getting to said tiger and if I think it's going to look good with that or not.
What she's trying to say is she's trying to secure a way to get out of doing the tiger.
I am not. I'd already said that I was going to try to do a tiger this year because I hadn't done it before. But I am saying that if all the trials of doing said tiger on PVC to see what it looks like end up looking like crap, I'm not putting it on that rod.
I will.
No, you won't. Shut up. Anyways, the next step, the next episode, whether it is the next podcast that we do or not, the next episode of Built to Cast will be us final shaping of the grips, reaming them out, and gluing up the entire rear handle. Because that's how Wes likes to do it. I personally like to do the rear grip and the real seat and let that chill for a day and then do the foregrip. But there's no reason why we can't do all three together either. So we'll get the whole handle glued together so that the next step would be moving on to the tiger. And then guide wraps are last. Well, the very last thing is going to be putting the bulb on. So we have to make sure that the rear grips is set exactly where the bulb's going to match up to it. You're putting a bulb on it, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you learned how to make that grip. And if you have questions, comments, concerns about any of the stuff that you saw in tonight's episode, then by all means reach out. You can talk to me at thedecorativestudio@gmail.com. You can reach me on Facebook, on Messenger, any of that stuff. And if you need EVA, by all means feel free to go look at threadcentral.net to see all the EVA colors I have, including the EVA inlay sheets, which are good for adding trim and also creating designs for your grips as well. I have courses there for the Decorative Studio. which just put out St. John's a few weeks ago, and it's classes on how to do decorative wraps from start to finish, very similar to how I'm going over these grips from start to finish. And there may be some upcoming content that may be going on YouTube about certain other things, but we'll keep that close to heart until I'm ready to announce all that kind of stuff. And really just have fun when it comes to cutting EVA. There's going to be a lot of trials and a lot of failures, but out of those failures, come up with something kind of cool. That's kind of how I figure out how to do these. Is just I thought it was going to be a screw up, and then hey, not too bad. It's not the prettiest thing I've ever made in my life, but it's not the ugliest thing I've ever made either. I made some pretty ugly stuff, but you figured this out on the way out. So with that being said, we appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully you're learning something along the way, and we will see you in the next episode of Decorate It, and y'all have a great night. Bye.
Toodles.